Well, how's it going, everybody? Welcome back to another video. Now, before I begin, I have to do my obligatory Canadian apologies for the absolute shit filming conditions I've chosen. I didn't really choose it. It's just that Taiwan is still in its rainy season, and so it's decided to rain until the end of all the time. And so nighttime is really the only time I had time to film it. So yeah, sorry for that it's dark and also extremely loud, but if you want the full experience of Taiwan, you're gonna have to put up with a little bit of noise like the rest of us. And today I wanted to talk about something I saw on C-Milk's Instagram account, which I found kind of funny, a little interesting, and it was this Chinese girl, this TikTok streamer or whatever, trying to clarify that, about the whole dog eating thing in China. And she tries to explain to her audience that Chinese people do not ever eat dog, that it's something of the past. They only did, centuries ago, and now people simply don't do it. And and that dogs are our friends, and that they would never hurt a dog or anything like that. And the reason that's so funny, and the reason I found it so incredibly interesting, is that's just not true. It's just not the whole truth. Chinese people absolutely do eat dogs. Now, in her defense, she actually maybe despite being Chinese herself, maybe doesn't know that Chinese people eat dogs, and there's a reason for that as well. And the reason actually answers my next question I was going to ask, which was, do all Chinese people eat dogs? And the answer to that is absolutely not. Now, this girl looks quite young, so she's probably from the younger generation. She maybe grew up and lived in a larger city in China where dog meat is less common. And so if all of her friends and all her family and everyone she's ever known doesn't eat dogs, then of course to her it would seem a bit absurd and maybe just like a lie that Chinese people eat dogs. Or she could also be just trying to make her country look better, which, is another thing, because you can't, she knows that she probably can't say, yes, Chinese people eat dogs, and then it puts her in this sort of moral, ethical food debate that's, not exactly the most defensible position to put yourself in. So, yeah, not all Chinese people eat dogs. However, I will say this, a large portion of the population absolutely does. I can say that after years of living there. It's really not uncommon. Now, is it so common that it's normal, like as in pork or beef? Is it in all their dishes? And I'll say no. However, normal is kind of a odd word to use in this situation, especially if you're talking about a region like Guangdong, where I lived, because normal there doesn't really apply because they eat literally everything. There's a joke I heard about the Guangdong people, and it was like, if an alien came and landed in Earth, anywhere on Earth, we would want to study it, we want to learn from it, figure out its properties, can we speak to it, all that kind of stuff. However, if the alien ended up landing in Guangdong, they would just eat it immediately. Which is funny, but it's also true. They, especially in Guangdong, they eat everything. So the idea of normal doesn't exactly apply there. So it's not normal, however, it's not exactly hidden from plain sight. If you go there, it's not hard to find like a dog meat restaurant, or at least a restaurant with dog meat on the menu, or if it's in a larger place and they kind of have to hide it because of a reason I'll get into, it'll be sort of like an under the table menu item. It'll be sort of something you'd have to kind of ask specifically for, and they might do it if they know you, kind of thing. So like I said, not all regions of China have it. The government lately has taken some pretty major steps to try and not exactly quell dog meat, although yes, it's more trying to cover it up, more trying to hide the fact that people do it. And that's why even Chinese people themselves don't really know that it exists. If they've never left the city they grew up in, or have never really been exposed to it. However, when I lived there, dog meat restaurants were fairly common. They weren't hidden. They were kind of all over the place. And I'm gonna get hit by a car. So it's a bit like that. It's the same thing with the whole Tiananmen Square incident or massacre or whatever you want to call that. Virtually I shouldn't say virtually none, but most Chinese people don't know about that incident. Especially again the younger generation. There's almost no literature on the event, and so dog meat is sort of like that. However, it's more known, I think, than unknown. The restaurants are everywhere. It's fairly common. Now, another question I wanted to answer, because of course I live here in Taiwan and I should be making content about Taiwan, is do Taiwanese people eat dog meat? Now, I did a little bit of personal research in this, in this topic, I guess, and I asked my coworker, do Taiwanese people eat dogs? And she was kind of taken aback. She was like, no, absolutely not. We don't eat dogs. That's ridiculous. And then I said, really? Like, no one? And then she said, well, you know, the Yuanjumin, or I don't know if I'm saying that right, the Aborigines people up in the mountains, they sometimes do. And I thought, okay, that's interesting. So I asked I just happened to have an Aborigines friend, so I asked her, and she said, yes, there are some tribes, some Aborigines tribes that do eat dog. And she said that even normal Taiwanese people do as well. And I thought, weird, because my other coworker said that absolutely not. And it's the same situation. The coworker that said that Taiwanese people, you know, just a categorical no, is getting really dark around this area. I guess I'm just going to walk back down the street like an idiot, otherwise you won't be able to see me. It's too dark in other places. So anyways, yeah, so it's the same situation. That one coworker that said no, Taiwanese people don't eat dog, she just simply had never been exposed to it and didn't know. Whereas my Aborigines friend, you know, has been exposed to it and knew about it and said yes. So I asked a third coworker who also said yes, Taiwanese people do. However, it's an older generation thing and people don't typically do it anymore. And she said, you know, the reason was that, you know, if you were poor growing up in Taiwan, back when it wasn't so economically strong, you know, you really didn't have that many options, and dog meat just sort of was the only thing, you know, it's an easy meat to find, it's not expensive, and yeah, I'm not going to get into the ethics and the morals of it, but that was the reasoning she gave me anyways. I can say from personal experience, I haven't yet seen like a dog meat restaurant, simply because it's just not something that people eat at all. And in fact, I will say this about the Taiwanese, they do own dogs. A lot more Taiwanese people own dogs, you know, percentage-wise than I would say the Chinese do. And so I think the attitude towards it would be completely different as well. Taiwanese people seem to be huge dog people, dog lovers. In fact, one weird kind of thing I've noticed is that they keep their dogs in like these baby carriages, but for dogs. So when they go and walk their dog isn't actually doing any walking. It sits in this baby carriage. So I think the idea of eating a dog would probably freak most Taiwanese people out, unless you're Aborigines, unless you grew up incredibly poor. And even then, you know, people just don't eat it here. It's not something I've seen, at least compared to China, where I saw it pretty much everywhere, really. And that's the other thing too, you'll probably, if you ask a Chinese friend who grew up in China, they'll probably have some stories of them unknowingly eating dog and didn't know, like as children or something, and they were completely freaked out about it. I've heard tons of those stories from anything from human baby fetuses to, of course, dog, and among other horrific things that I wouldn't wish on anybody. It's one of those situations where they sit down for dinner with their family and then they're eating and eating and they go, what's this? And then they go, it's dog, and then the kids kind of freak the fuck out. I've heard lots of those stories, and I'll tell one of my own, not of me eating dog, because I haven't. But, you know, a couple of years ago I was in Guangdong in a place called Huidong, which is in Huizhou. It's a part of Huizhou. It's a lot of farmers and things like that, a lot of Kejia people. And my friend invited me over for a dinner. I want to say it was Chinese New Year, but it might not have been that. Her dad had a farm with a whole bunch of animals on it, and for the dinner he, you know, killed a bunch of the animals, which is what you would do for a big feast. It's expensive to kill a lot of farm animals. And one of those ones just so happened to be dog. You know, I watched it die and everything. It was like, it was pretty weird. It died quick. You know, they were respectful. They didn't like torture it or anything. You know, that's what they had for dinner, and it was normal. So, you know, that's just sort of what it was like. Again, not getting into the ethics or the morals. And however, on the flip side of the coin, of that coin, I'm not saying that expression right. There are stories of people treating animals horribly. It's raining right now, and that really sucks, and that does happen. You know, Chinese people believe that the sooner you eat the animal after it dies, the fresher the meat and the more delicious it is. And so, you know, you'll hear stories of, I'm not going to say them because they're a bit graphic, and I don't want to get too far into it because I don't want to get demonetized, and I got to get out of this rain. Okay, I'm out of the rain, and that's just Taiwan for you. It's gonna rain constantly. But anyways, one thing I wanted to touch on before I end this video is that I've actually had my ideas, or what I consider normal to eat, sort of thrown out of balance a little bit after my time living in China. One of the things I really enjoyed eating there was donkey. I just assumed that maybe lots of people ate donkey and I just never have, a bit like rabbit. I know a lot of Western people eat rabbit and really enjoy it, but it's not something I've ever been able to eat before. I've never had that opportunity. And I just, for some reason, in my head, thought donkey was one of those things. And I don't know if that's going to be something that's going to make a lot of people upset or angry, or if that's going to be something that's just ethically unacceptable to you. I was just completely ignorant. And it was actually, honestly, if you want to know, pretty delicious. It was, they serve it in all kinds of different ways. And it's just one of those things I've always enjoyed. And then when I moved to Taiwan, where people definitely don't eat donkey, I was teaching my class, one of my first classes here in Taiwan, and I was giving them a spelling bee, and I had to describe a word, they had to know the word, and then write it down. And the word was donkey, and I said it's like a horse, but smaller. And some of the kids struggled, and I was like, you could eat it. And my CT, or my assistant, just sort of looked up from her paperwork from the back of the class and just shook her head like, no, what the hell are you talking about? What are you doing? You don't eat donkeys. And we had to have this whole talk. And then of course the kids were really confused after that. And it's just one of those things where I was completely ignorant to the fact that eating donkey isn't normal. For a lot of people, it was normal to me, and it was normal to all the Chinese people that I knew, and it was super common. And so, this whole dog meat thing is really not something I like to argue about, because it's, some people think it's normal, some people don't, and everyone's got their own mind made up about it. But I just wanted to make this video to sort of re-clarify for that girl on CMOK's Instagram account. But with all that being said, thank you guys so much for watching. Stay positive, keep your stick on the ice, support me on Patreon if you like. You can pledge whatever amount of money you like. Follow me on Instagram at Prozzie_SR, and I'll catch you guys on the next one.